Welcome to Silicon Valley Buzz, a TV show where we discuss happenings in this, the most fertile spot on the planet for new ideas. I'm your host, Seth Shostak, and tonight, the buses are coming. The Mountain View City Council has reversed itself and voted 3-2 to reduce El Camino from 3 lanes to 2 lanes to make room for a dedicated lane for bus traffic up and down El Camino. Great idea, or merely a guarantor of grievous gridlock? Well, tonight we'll be talking to 2 guests who will weigh in on this matter, and I am very happy to talk to them about this because this is something that's going to affect you every single day. I'm pleased to welcome first Maarten Koringa. Maarten is a longtime resident of Mountain View and a concerned neighbor. Maarten, welcome to this show. And next, Maarten, Aaron Grossman. Aaron is a part-time director of the Friends of Stephen Creek Trail. We're all friends of Stephen Creek Trail, and a local activist. Aaron, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to begin with you, Aaron, because what's the plan? It's called Bus Rapid Transit, or BRT. Sounds like a luncheon offering. Tell me, what's the vision for BRT?
Yeah, BRT is very tasty. Bus Rapid Transit has a number of different possibilities, but the only way it's really going to be rapid is if there's a dedicated lane, which would be the innermost lane on El Camino Real, northbound and southbound. And it will have an impact. However, those in favor of it think it will be a positive impact. Okay,
well, clearly it's going to have an impact because it's going to take that lane. They're talking about a dedicated lane. In other words, no private automobile traffic in there at all?
Private cars would not be allowed. VTA has agreed that emergency vehicles, police and fire trucks, will definitely be allowed, and they are open to considering privately owned shuttle buses. Because the whole purpose is to take advantage of a dedicated lane to move large numbers of people much more rapidly. Okay,
so the lanes adjacent to the central median are the ones that are going to be used, one in each direction. What's the motivation for this? How many people these days are taking the bus up and down El Camino?
About 6,000 a day.
6,000 a day. All right, let me turn to you, Maarten, because you think that shutting down 1/3 of the pavement running up and down the South Bay Peninsula here isn't worth it. What do you see as the major problems here?
Well, you know, there's a vast variety of problems. I hardly know where to begin, but let's start with what it's actually going to do to the, you know, we're talking taking a state highway, a congested state highway, and reducing it from 3 lanes to 2 lanes. Now, if you've ever driven down to 3 lanes of El Camino, that sucker is crowded. I mean, you wait for several cycles of the lights to get through there. So that's number one, is forcing all that traffic into 2 lanes, which means actually forcing it off of El Camino and through neighborhood streets.
Okay, so you're saying it's just going to make congestion worse?
Yes, and VTA readily admits that in their plans, their proposals. They acknowledge that yes, it will increase congestion, it will increase commute time, and it will increase the traffic through the neighborhoods.
Okay, but they obviously think it's worth it. I mean, clearly the congestion might get even worse if you don't do something. Isn't that a possibility, Aaron? I mean, the South Bay is going to grow, right?
If we don't do bus rapid transit with a dedicated lane, things are going to grind to gridlock. And also, it's not at all hours. It's at rush hour that this happens. And rush hour is getting bigger and bigger. So yeah, there's more people. The only way you're going to increase capacity on El Camino Real is a major change. So yes, this is a road diet, which is necessary. And there are no other alternatives, really. You can't get more people through unless you've got rapid transit.
Well, I'll tell you, it's not a very appealing diet, because if you walk down El Camino and you look in those buses, you know, and I walk down El Camino.
If you walk down El Camino and look in buses, you can't see who's in there. Have you ridden on them? They're full. Excuse me.
They're not full. I walk along Mountain View from Calderon to Castro and look at the 522s. I look at the 22s. At what time?
Rush hour is what we're talking about.
6 to 7.
Well, okay, all right. He says they're not full. You say they are full, but you gave us a number here, Aaron. You said 6,000 people a day are using the bus now. 6,000 people. Now, I kind of informally made an estimate driving over here, and I didn't take the bus, I must say. I took my car. How many people use a lane of El Camino per hour during the day, not at 3 in the morning? And it looks like you probably get 2,000 to 3,000 people 2,000 to 3,000 cars. I'm assuming one person per car. Trying to be conservative. 2,000 to 3,000 cars per hour down each lane of El Camino. There are 3 lanes now. That's 5,000 or 6,000 per hour. You say the bus use is 6,000 per day. So the facts are that the auto traffic is at least 10 or 20 times more than the bus traffic, right?
And getting worse.
And undoubtedly getting worse. But,
and it's going to keep getting worse.
So, but how many more people are going to be riding the bus, I guess is what I'm getting at. 6,000 a day now. If we go to this dedicated bus lane, is that going to double? What's going to happen to that number?
Well, first of all, as it keeps getting worse, the capacity goes down, and all those cars are sitting there, generating pollution, generating smog. And with buses, with good quality bus rapid transit, where you've got Wi-Fi on the bus, better quality, you're going to increase numbers 20, 30%. It's going to take a while, but also the frequency of the bus will be increased. So it's going to be much more attractive.
You know what? I'll say something about the frequency, because one part of this plan is actually to reduce the frequency of the 22 buses. So this new express bus only stops about every mile or so, 2 whole stops in Mountain View. And you know, for the rest of the people who live in Mountain View, if they want to take the bus, they've got to wait for the 22, which they're actually going to reduce the frequency of the 22. So rather than simply improving the service, they're actually partially degrading the bus service to
if the
make
bus
this thing
is
happen.
jammed in traffic, that is ground to a halt. Because the problem with the current system is that buses can go no faster than the cars are going. So when the cars reach gridlock, so do the buses.
Okay. Well, actually, I mean, we're talking about extending this from the idea is to extend it from Palo Alto down to San Jose. It's like 17 miles, right?
14 miles.
Well, okay, I read 17, but maybe it's 14. Okay. I'm not going to argue about 3 miles. We're talking about a 20% effect there. But it's going to more or less halve the time it would take to go that entire route. Now, I don't know what fraction of the traffic actually goes all the way from Palo Alto to San Jose or the reverse. But I mean, that's a significant improvement. What about the other possibilities here? I mean, Maarten, would you go for example, having what they call bulb outs? In other words, keep the buses in the right-hand lanes, but build, you know, these sort of cutouts in the pavement so they can get out of the way when they're picking up and dropping off passengers. That might speed things up too and reduce the gridlock.
I'm fine with that. I'm just not fine with closing down 2 lanes of traffic on a crowded state highway.
Okay, and so what's the long-term solution when, as Aaron says, you know, the number of people keeps growing, they keep building condos in El Camino?
It's going to get more congested because there's more people in Mountain View and there's more jobs in Mountain View, and all those people are going to move around. So that's inevitable. But I question that they're going to take the bus, because the bus, you can't take the bus when you want to go to Safeway and buy 6 bags of groceries. You can't take the bus when you want to go to Orchard Supply and buy 2 bags of compost. You can't take the bus if you got to go to Stanford Hospital because you got to walk, you know, a couple miles to do it. And if you're sick, you're not going to want to do that. So the bus only serves a very small percentage of the population, those who absolutely can't drive and those who just happen to be near a stop and happen to be going to a destination that's close to a stop. The rest of us, if I got to go someplace and I got to walk half an hour, they're not counting that time. They're counting the reduced time from Palo Alto to East Ridge Shopping Center. The buses are going to go 17 minutes faster. But who goes from Palo Alto to East Ridge Shopping Center? And they're not counting the time it takes to walk to the bus stop, and they're not counting the time it takes to walk to the bus. So the bus, yes, it'll go a little faster, and it's nowhere near 50% faster. It will go fractionally faster because it runs faster, but it's still got to make the stops, and it's still got to require their passengers to wait for it and to walk to the stop.
Okay, there's a bunch of points that have been brought up. Before we go too much further. Increased frequency means easier access. And you don't have a lot of cross lines of buses unless you've got the main line, the backbone, which is the 522, increased service. This will allow VTA to do economically and practically more cross-service routes to reach these other places. As the bus traffic increases, as the bus ridership increases, you can support the other lines. If you look into the VTA studies, they're constantly checking ridership, and they have a very diffuse population over a large county, Santa Clara County, that they have to cover. And as ridership will pick up, they can cover more cross lines.
But what he's saying is that if you have a spine, a high service frequency spine, that will generate the rest of the traffic. You'll begin to get the branch lines. The number of users goes up as a square, the number of stops or something like that. Sounds like it makes sense to me.
And also, you were saying that people don't ride it. There are people that ride. I do ride the bus.
Sure, there are people that ride the bus. No argument there. And I think the bus serves a very useful, important function. As I said before, I'm not anti-bus. I'm not anti-VTA or anti-public transportation, but I'm
anti-dedicated lanes.
Dedicating 2 lanes to a bus that runs every 10 minutes, where buses are rolling by at 50 miles an hour, while in the adjacent 2 lanes, literally a stripe away, are people parked into gridlock. And I think that's a ridiculous idea.
Let me switch gears here slightly, talk about some of the other things. What about the businesses along El Camino? Aaron, if I were a business along El Camino and they said, we're going to slow down all the traffic here, would I be happy about that?
Well, people tend to go into the stores when the traffic is rough, right? Why sit in traffic when you can go into the shop, get some coffee, do some shopping?
Is that how you decide when you're going to go into a shop? You just look at the density of the traffic, say, it's pretty viscous here,
look at what happened to Castro Street. Major road diet from what it used to be. People used to drive through on Castro Street. Now they stop and do things. Castro Street's a wonderful shopping area, dining area.
Is that what the VTA is getting out here?
This is the Grand
Boulevard
The Grand Boulevard initiative is to make El Camino Real much more like Castro Street, where you've got a destination every close proximity.
Aaron, listen. Nobody goes down Castro Street to get from one end to the other. They only go to Castro Street to get to Castro Street because it takes forever. There's too many lights. There's no parking. Castro Street's almost a pedestrian mall. And everybody's going down Calderon. Everybody's going down Shoreline. Nobody goes down Castro Street anymore because the traffic is so congested there. And there are times when you try to get down Castro Street during rush hour and there's a lot of trains running, it can take 15, 20 minutes to get across the railroad tracks and on the Central Expressway, and nobody does it.
And on El Camino, you need a fast way of getting people through. Okay, I hear no vision, I hear no solution from the people that are anti-dedicated lane. It said, I want to keep driving my car by myself at rush hour with everybody else in all 3 lanes. That's not a solution. It's a recipe for gridlock.
In a free society, the solutions happen. They're not driven by a huge government bureaucracy. People decide, I don't want to drive a big car because I'm going to get a scooter, or I'm going to drive a little electric car, or I'm going to, and look at what cars have done with the evolution of cars in the last 20 years and compared to the evolution of buses. Those buses look a lot like the buses I rode when I was a kid back in the 50s. So
they didn't have hybrid buses back then. They didn't have
wait a minute. Before we get into bus technology,
so cars are evolving. Cars are evolving.
So are the buses.
And traffic solutions.
You're going to have self-driving buses one of these days too, as opposed to self-driving cars, which is still one person in each car in gridlock.
What about the point of view of the Mountain View City Council? As you know, kind of a big story, but back in April, some council members, and I'm talking here about Mike Kasperzak, Pat Showalter, and Ken Rosenberg, kind of reversed direction. They had said, or at least some of them had said, when they were running for office, they were against the idea of shutting down these 2 lanes.
Pat and Ken.
And then they said, well, we've changed our minds. Now that's kind of gutsy.
Yeah, they evolved their thinking. Evolution in action.
It's very Darwinian. Okay, so, what do you think of that? I mean, Mark,
well,
what do you think
of that?
What happened there?
That, given additional information, they may have come upon information that caused them to change their minds. But the very least that they should do, and I don't think Mike Kasperzak changed his mind. I think that was never his campaign promise. But the other 2 council members spoke before the election that they were opposed to it, and then suddenly got new information. Well, at the very least, they need to share that information. They need to share with us what motivated them to change their position.
They have. Ken Rosenberg has already put out the statement about what convinced him. And Pat has talked in a couple of public forums that she's learned more, she's seen more. Their thinking has changed.
Give me some specifics. What really changed them? I mean, just say they learned more, they changed their minds. What in particular do you think?
A couple of issues. Social equity, that the people riding the bus tend to be, to a large percentage, lower class, not voting so much, not white, upper class whose voices are mostly heard politically, and that the people on the bus needed some representation, needed some better bus transit. Also, that we're headed towards gridlock without bus rapid transit and effective implementation, and that this was to open the door. VTA still needs to improve it. What they put out is a good start, and they've talked about increasing the frequency. 10-minute intervals is just a start. They'll be increasing the frequency, and they're talking about improving it. Also, they stop at Escuela. The Mountain View City Council has now opened the door for a possibility. They haven't locked it in. What they've done is open the door from being closed where it was before. And still, there's no other solution to getting more people through on El Camino Real.
Well, so you know, it's something that occurs to me, is that they're building another light rail. And the light rail is this nice thing they built, and it stops about every mile. And nobody rides it. It's just almost empty. And how is this different? It's got stops a long way apart. Granted, they're in a more busier corridor.
It's a totally different. Look at El Camino Real versus where the light rail goes.
It's an infrastructure-heavy project. It's not about the buses. It's not about increasing bus rates. It's about building stations. It's about building infrastructure just to get the bus moving, and all because VTA has a computer program that predicts that more people will ride the bus if they shave a little bit off the speed of the bus. Frankly, I don't buy it.
Yeah,
well, you don't ride the bus. You never have.
Okay, but if you actually look at the VTA figures, they say it's going from, you said 6,000 people a day. I thought it was 16, but whatever, it's going to go up by about 25% or 30% if they implement this. And that's not a heck of a lot of people compared to the number of people that are using the street. So this becomes a cost-benefit ratio kind of argument that, yeah, you'll get more people riding the bus, but in the short term, you're not going to get that many more people riding the bus. And if you add, what is the average trip time for people on the peninsula to get from here to there? I'm sure that's going to go down. So you can say, well, it's a social benefit for certain classes of people. But is that a good argument? Is that what we should be doing or not?
Well, keeps coming back to what's going to happen if we don't do anything. We grind to a halt, and then you've got fewer people per hour.
But is this going to keep us from grinding to a halt?
If you ride the bus, it will.
Okay. Let me, I told you I never rode the 22 or the 522. I work in the East Bay, so, those are not a commute option for me. But I tried commuting on public transportation. I walked down to the Mountain View train station. I went to Palo Alto and took the Dumbarton Express. I didn't have to drive. It cost about the same as I would spend in gas and insurance. And it took an hour and a half each way. So every day I was spending 3 hours commuting to work. And finally I said, no, that's 2 hours of my every work day that I'm spending commuting instead of doing the things I want to do. And I think that's why I really have my doubts that people are going to leap on this new express bus, because it's still going to take a huge amount of time to get from one place to another because of the walking to the bus stops, the waiting for the buses. It didn't work for me at all. And my time, I think that's money, that's time that you never get back.
I agree.
Well, Maarten, let me point out to you that our generation, if you will, was raised on the appeal of automobiles, private automobiles. But the millennials, the younger generation, are not so sold on private automobiles, having those fuzzy dice hanging from the rear view mirror. That doesn't speak to them necessarily. They're riding those white buses all up and down the peninsula, right? They're in buses.
Many are.
Yeah, and they do their Wi-Fi stuff. I mean, they can work on the buses. They don't have to pay attention. They don't have to drive, so forth. Maybe the point here is that, yeah, for a certain generation, shall we say, riding the bus is not appealing. But it isn't to say that it isn't going to become more appealing to the younger generation. What would you say to that?
It's not about it being unappealing. What it's about is that for most people, it just doesn't serve. It doesn't work for them. For me, for example, I live down in Old Mountain View, and I would I'd have to walk for 20 minutes to get to Castor Street station, the BRT station, if they unfortunately wind up building it. And then it would only take me to, I guess I could go to Whole Foods and limit myself to 2 bags of groceries. And
you can go the other way to Sunnyvale and do shopping at Safeway in Sunnyvale.
Yeah, but he's got a problem with the bags.
You know,
shopping cart. They have portable shopping carts. They're very handy.
Okay, so it's.
All right, let me get back to the question.
Well, just a minute. You don't have to do your shopping at rush hour.
Yeah, well, I think
most of the time El Camino is not.
I do my shopping Saturday morning before the.
So,
when there's no traffic.
So a bus lane will not affect you.
You say, what's going to happen? There's going to be gridlock. The world is going to come to an end. But the fact is, there's going to be gridlock, and people find ways around it. There's already lots of places that have flexible commute times. People will do certain errands during the off-traffic hours. The traffic will redistribute itself time-wise. You know, people find a way. Left to their own devices, people find a way. People are flexible. People are innovative.
And they will find a way around dedicated lanes.
People are a lot more innovative than this crazy idea of saying buses come first. You know, we're going to close down 2 lanes. You know, I think there's a lot that VTA can do to increase their ridership without blocking the 2 lanes of traffic on
April 28th, Aaron. A lot of the public showed up at the Mountain View City Council meeting, and they agreed with Martin. They said,
no, they did. It was half and half.
Well, there were a lot there.
Not by my count.
There were a lot of people that were unhappy. And in fact, there's been a petition, even a move to recall council members who support bus rapid transit.
Yeah, we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you, where is that going? Anywhere?
No.
Okay.
I agree. It's not, the recall's not going to go anywhere, but I think...
Well, could they even, I mean, even if they convince the city council to reverse itself, would that even matter? Because this is not ultimately being decided by the cities, right? El Camino Real is a state road, so we don't decide.
What the cities say does have an impact. And the city councils don't have the final say on what happens on El Camino. But they do have a voice. They also have a voice to improve what VTA proposes if it is approved.
We may be closed down 2 lanes each way and just have the cars go elsewhere.
That's not part of the game. Okay. That's not proposal.
What about the effect on other parallel streets?
It's already happening. It won't make that much difference. Yeah. It's not the fault of dedicated lanes.
What about the fact that Palo Alto apparently would prefer that these bus lanes go no farther north than Showers, Whole Foods? It doesn't sound like they're on board with this.
We'll have to see how their thinking evolves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Sunnyvale is not on board, and Los Altos is not on board.
But Mountain View
is kind of the lone wolf here. Their interpretation is that they're being bold, looking to the future. I think they're misguided.
Yeah.
And I don't think a recall is going to change things. I think what's going to change things is people starting to pay attention, people realizing how that's going to affect their lives and how it's going to affect their neighborhoods. That might change things because nobody's going to move forward with this if the vast majority of people
I would suggest that either of you ride the 22 or the 522 during rush hour, and you'll see there's a bunch of young, high-tech people working on their laptops, not with Wi-Fi, because the current buses are not technologically advanced, but they're still doing work. There's a growing number. When I ride the bus, I see a wide range of people, little old ladies speaking Russian, some Hispanic kids, older people, also, obviously, tech people. So, as you pointed out, there's a growing avoidance of owning a car and being tied to it. And when you're talking about your freedom, of course, during non-rush hours, you can do your shopping Saturday morning. That's not an issue. It's only rush hour.
I got no problem with the El Camino buses. I think El Camino has great bus service. It has a 522, a rapid transit bus, or an express bus.
But what's going to happen to these buses during the future gridlock when you've got more and more cars stopping the buses? The buses can't go any faster than the cars are going.
That's just what happens when you build up urban congestion, and our city fathers are doing that.
You have to just accept it.
That's a defeatist attitude.
Well, what about this as another solution, Martin? But maybe you're not keen about this, given your earlier remark. We just take some dedicated right-of-way and put light rail on it and run that up and down, and then, not buses, but light rail. Would you go with that?
I mean, in fact, Ken talked about that. Ken said, well, maybe in the future we could actually put steel tracks down, and then maybe we could decide that some of those stations were no good, like the Evelyn light rail station, and then we could jackhammer them up and get rid of them again. It's, you know,
it doesn't sound like you're very, very keen on public transportation.
I'm very keen on public transportation. I think it's essential.
As long as it doesn't go faster than the cars.
I don't think that it should be, I mean, it's the cart pushing the horse here, and I think that the 6,000 people an hour, you know, should have a voice in this rather than the 6,000 people a day that are going to be sitting on those few
What
buses
I
every
hear
10
is
minutes.
a refusal to recognize that we are no longer the quiet suburbs. We are an urban area. We are part of an even bigger urban megalopolis.
You know what?
And
Look at Amsterdam. Now there's an urban megalopolis, and you know what? They have great public transportation. And you know what? There isn't even a dedicated lane for the light rail. The light rail goes on the same streets as the bicycles and the cars. And as I said, I have no problem with public transportation. It's closing down lanes. It's reserving the lanes for the bus.
So how does the light rail get through a traffic jam then, when it's rush hour?
Well,
It waits like everybody else. They're all
Well,
in the same
then
boat.
that's
That's
not an answer.
egalitarianism. You know?
well, but automobile ownership in a city like Amsterdam is quite a bit different than it would be here in the South Bay. I mean, that has to be said. The European cities have been set up for public transportation. You don't really want a car in a place like Amsterdam, any more than you want a car in Manhattan. You don't really want a car there. They have public transportation, all okay. Maybe the long-term vision is that you, in fact, this is my preferred vision, is you just trench El Camino, you put heavy rail down underneath, let the cars fight it out on the surface. That's it.
If we had the money for that. But the whole
We don't,
reason
yes.
bus rapid transit being considered is it's a fraction of the cost of light rail. Light rail is 10 times the cost, and you can't change it. Just a minute. Bus rapid transit, if it turns out not to be a good idea, it's not that hard to change it or remove it or modify it. Once you put rails in, you don't change that.
But where's the money going? The money is going to the infrastructure. The $250 million is going to build stations and fancy little things, and you know, it's not going to increase number of buses. They actually
simplify that. Are you worried about this?
They're running fewer
230 million?
buses. The plan is to run fewer buses and save on salaries for bus drivers. That's one of the pitches that VTA's made.
That's not accurate. The 22 bus can stay there. Yeah, and the proposal can be changed.
All right, listen, we're coming to the end here. I want to ask each of you, I'll begin with you, Aaron. I'm going to ask you to peer into a crystal ball here and tell me how you see El Camino 5 years down the road, so to speak.
Hopefully they finished putting in dedicated lanes for bus rapid transit, but I'll probably be on my bicycle on the bike lanes that are part of the project now, because riding a bicycle up and down El Camino is dangerous.
How would it be any less dangerous given that the buses are next to the median?
The bike lanes are to the outside.
Yeah, exactly. So how does that become?
There are dedicated bike lanes as part of the proposal.
Oh, okay. So you could do that without the bus lanes, though.
Not likely. Who's going to pay for it?
Very quickly, Maarten, 5 years from now.
I see El Camino as even more mature, with 667 beautiful mature street trees still growing happily. Traffic busy as always, but plenty of places to turn left, ease of access to the local businesses.
And grinding to a halt at rush hour.
Beautified version. Well, listen, more people are coming to the South Bay, it's obvious. More people will be coming and going on El Camino Real. So bus rapid transit is an option, so will you be taking a ride? Or do you think you're being taken for a ride? You've heard the pros and cons here, and for that I'd like to thank my two guests for being here. Also thanks to our expert KMVT staff, Bobby Chastain, our director and producer, I should say, and our hardworking series producer, Susan Hubbard. I'm Seth Shostak, suggesting that you join us next month for Silicon Valley Buzz.